EMG's Professional Development Channel brings you the expertise, the management, and the guidance you need to achieve success in the classroom for you and your students. Each one of these children is unique. Each has skills that enable them to succeed and weaknesses that need strengthening in order to continue on the path of learning. Assessment plays a key role in developing the skills they'll need when they leave school. Teachers must determine what students have learned and how well they have learned it. Performance assessment focuses on finding out what students can actually do and whether they can use what they've learned. Kay Burke has taught for 25 years at all grade levels, from elementary to graduate level courses. As Senior Vice President of Instruction for Skylight Training and Publishing, she explains how performance assessment emphasizes the application and transfer of learning.
Well, authentic assessment, as the word implies, is real assessment. It's also called performance assessment, where we ask the students to actually perform a task rather than maybe taking a test, a multiple choice test. They can take tests also, because that does measure a different kind of knowledge. It measures some content. But when you really want the students to show you what they've learned and what they can do, you need to have some performance tasks. Very simple things, like instead of what are the parts of the letter, write a letter to a congressman talking about something. Students would have a portfolio maybe as evidence that they have completed some task, evidence of knowledge. Students would write logs, journals, letters, anything, an experiment in a science class, building a project, doing a skit, acting something out. Because by seeing the students do it, you really know that they understand it, as opposed to taking a test, which they may guess or they may memorize and then forget it. So it really emphasizes the application of knowledge rather than just knowledge for knowledge's sake, and also the transfer of knowledge, because if you could really do it in the class, it usually means you could later do it outside of school and in a job situation. So authentic means real. It's performance tasks that will really translate to life.
A wide variety of assessment techniques are available for teachers to use in evaluating student achievement and effort. Performance samples include art products, media experiments, team and small group projects, self and peer evaluations, research reports, journals, response journals, and audio tapes of readings. Tests and examinations range from multiple choice, essay, short answer, and matching. A third assessment technique is teacher observation, where teachers make anecdotal recordings in the context of class lessons, interviews, checklists, or student journal entries. Many teachers are already implementing performance assessment in their classroom. The greatest challenge is how to grade a student on a creative test.
The hard part really for teachers, they're already doing a lot of these things. I mean, most good teachers are already doing logs, journals, projects, performances. The really difficult part is how to grade it. Because if it's a test, you put it in a Scantron machine and you grade it. There's a right and a wrong answer. When you have performances, there's all sorts of different criteria. So the hard part is as a teacher, is to come up with an evaluation tool, like some say a rubric or a scoring guide, because your project will have different criteria than your pamphlet, than your paper, than your book report. So the idea is to come up with different criteria and a different scoring guide.
It's important that students have a clear understanding of the performance expectations.
What we recommend, and which is probably more meaningful, is to have the students help the teacher come up with that scoring guide, because that means they've internalized some of that criteria, they understand the criteria, and hopefully you do it before you do the project or performance, because the students use that as a guideline or a framework with which to complete the project. So there's no surprises. Grant Wiggins says we've got to take the mystery out of assessment. So rather than having the students do a project and then the teacher tell them at the end how they're going to grade it, they know up front what the criteria are, what's important, and then they use that as a planning guide as they do the project.
Students learn in different ways. Performance assessment allows the teacher to evaluate each student within the scope of their creative learning style, along with traditional tools of assessment.
You mix it as a repertoire with other assessment tools, like TEST. I mean, there is a place for standardized tests, there's a place for teacher-made tests, quizzes, logs, journals, but you want to expand that repertoire using the multiple intelligence of Gardner. Some students learn in a visual way, a musical way, some learn verbal linguistic, logical mathematic, so why not allow them to do some projects and performances that show those strengths and then try to assess those and give them credit for what they have learned. So it's just kind of a nice repertoire of teaching and learning and assessment strategies that is very meaningful.
Traditional testing tools are necessary in assessing student performance and learning.
A lot of people espouse just doing total performance assessment and no traditional assessment. But I don't think that prepares students for life, because oftentimes in life they will have to take a paper intensive. ACT, SAT, PSAT, law boards, almost every profession has some sort of test. So you really need to teach students test-taking skills and how to analyze things and how to answer questions. But in addition, that's just one segment. Then you need to also work with them on the performances and the project.
It's important for students to see the progress they've made, regardless of their individual performance level. Portfolios reflect student achievement, effort, and growth throughout the year.
Well, it's concrete, it's evidence. And if you see a portfolio, you see most of them are dated. This is a writing sample from maybe September. This is a writing sample from December. This is a writing sample from March. And the students, when they put those together in a portfolio, and they see, and parents see how much they've progressed since that time, you could really evaluate your own work. Also in a portfolio, you don't always have the final product. Sometimes you have like 3 steps of the project, like the rough draft, the second draft, the third draft, the initial drawing, the second drawing, the final drawing. So now you see like what Gardner calls like a process folio, where you see the process they went through to get the final product. This is an actual artifact that shows you how much they've improved over the year.
The teacher includes the student in selecting the content of a portfolio to provide a variety of performance samples.
What I found, we do a lot of work with portfolios, and we found, number one, the students collect almost everything they do, just because you want to have this wide variety of assortment. Number two, they select key things, but also the teacher selects key things. And as a teacher, you want to make sure in that portfolio you have some of the key components of what you're teaching to show that you've met your goals or your standards or your outcomes. So in a teacher, I may ask them to have 4 items in their portfolio that shows they understand the reading, the writing, the major concepts, the major outcomes. Those are my choice, so you have teacher selection. But then I always give 1 parent selection, maybe 1 peer selection, let a friend look at one, and then you have like 3 or 4 student selections. So the portfolio should have a selection by several people, not just the student selection. And by the way, it should not just have the best work. A lot of people say, oh, the best work, that's all you want. But that gives kind of a false picture of the students, because maybe